How to failover Azure SQL Virtual Network Integration. To failover Azure SQL Virtual Network Integration, you need to understand the concept of virtual network integration and how it works with Azure SQL. Virtual network integration allows you to isolate your Azure SQL database from the public internet and integrate it with your virtual network. First step is to create a virtual network and a subnet for your Azure SQL database. You need to ensure that the subnet is not used by any other resources and has enough IP addresses available. Next step is to enable virtual network integration for your Azure SQL database. You can do this by navigating to the Azure portal and selecting your Azure SQL database. Then click on the Virtual Network Integration option and select the virtual network and subnet you created. Now you need to configure the DNS settings for your Azure SQL database. You can do this by creating a DNS zone and adding a record for your Azure SQL database. To failover your Azure SQL database, you need to create a secondary database in a different region. You can do this by navigating to the Azure portal and selecting your Azure SQL database. Then click on the replication option and select the region you want to create the secondary database in. Once the secondary database is created, you can initiate the failover process. You can do this by navigating to the Azure portal and selecting your Azure SQL database. Then click on the replication option and select the failover option. After the failover is complete, you need to update the DNS settings to point to the new primary database. You can do this by navigating to the Azure portal and selecting the DNS zone you created. Then update the record to point to the new primary database. Best practice is to test the failover process regularly to ensure that it works as expected. You should also ensure that the virtual network integration is configured correctly and that the DNS settings are updated correctly. In summary, failing over Azure SQL Virtual Network Integration requires creating a virtual network and subnet for your Azure SQL database, enabling virtual network integration, configuring DNS settings, creating a secondary database, and initiating the failover process. By following these steps and best practices, you can ensure that your Azure SQL database is highly available and integrated with your virtual network.